today's prophecy update. On January 10th of this year, the Secretary General of the United Nations gave a speech at the Global Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, calling on the world's business community to play its role in helping to achieve the ambitious 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which seeks to eliminate poverty, hunger, and a raft of social ills, all within the next 15 years. During this speech, Mr. Ban Ki-moon stated, "I call Agenda 2030 our Declaration of Interdependence." This is the same document that President Obama signed in September of last year, which will allow the United Nations to further govern every nation on earth. Make no mistake, the United Nations and the 2030 Agenda that President Obama just signed last September is a huge step towards the one world government prophesied in Revelation 13, and it's our modern day King George.
There have been differences between America and Europe. No doubt there will be differences in the future. But the burdens of global citizenship continue to bind us together. A change of leadership in Washington will not lift this burden. In this new century, Americans and Europeans alike will be required to do more, not less. Partnership and cooperation among nations is not a choice. It is the only way, the one way, to protect our common security and advance our common humanity.
The Federal Reserve is a private banking cartel.
The Fed is a sometimes very independent organization.
What should be the proper relationship between the chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
The Federal Reserve is an independent agency. There is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take.
They print our money and then loan it to us at interest. The IRS is their collection agency.
So long as that is in place and there is no evidence that the administration or the Congress or anybody else is requesting that we do things other than what we think is the appropriate thing, then what the relationships are don't frankly matter.
Jeff Duncan says he saw IRS special agents using semi-automatic rifles at a gun range. Now he wants answers to why the agency needs that type of firepower.
Is this global governance at last? Is it one world, the central bank?
The great end times apostasy prophesied in the Bible appears to have shifted into high gear, with recent comments made by Pope Francis during his whirlwind American tour in recent days. Author John McTernan points to remarks made by the pontiff at New York's St. Patrick's Cathedral, in which he refers to his uniting with his Muslim brothers and sisters in a prayer to Almighty God, all-merciful. The choice of those words, all-merciful, was clearly a reference to the Islamic tenet that Allah is the Almighty God, all-merciful. McTernan sees the remarks as helping to lay the groundwork for a one-world religion, a religious marriage of convenience between Christianity and Islam, known to many as Chrislam. If Muslims go along with such an abomination, it will only be to consolidate their control over Rome prior to its destruction. McTernan writes, "It appears that apostasy has entered into a new phase now with the Pope. He wants to merge with Islam, while the Muslims view him as a pagan and want to destroy Rome and anything associated with Jesus Christ as the only begotten Son of God." Now,
Why do you say the years 212 to 216, something very significant involving the Antichrist will occur? Why do you say that?
Well, first of all, I got on that because there is a 500-year-old Mayan prophecy that said that in the colonial count 1776, there would be a 13-step countdown ending in the year 2012. And when you read the prophecy, it is literally 300 years earlier describing the Great Seal of the United States. We have 1776, 13 steps, over which is hovering the all-seeing eye, which is a prophecy of the return of that God, starting in 2012 through 2016. They said the end of 2012 would end an era, and then a new and final dispensation of man would begin. Now that's more interesting.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints.
In our architectural plans we're planning for the Third Temple, we included air conditioning, we included computers, parking lots, up to date, more beautiful, based on the Spirit, based on the words that we read in the prophets.
Israel's recent discoveries of massive oil and gas reserves in the Mediterranean Sea in 2009 and 2010 have made the Holy Land a highly wealthy nation. Literally on paper, Israel is suddenly rich. In fact, this scenario matches exactly with major Bible prophecies for today's end times, but one additional aspect, which I've not specifically mentioned before, is that up until now, it likely was a big question mark for Israel as to how to get the billions of dollars needed to build their third temple. However, at this point, the Holy Land's new overflowing wealth should make paying for their magnificent and custom-built third temple a relatively simple transaction financially. Then this means that from this point on, and just by a handshake to an investor or two, then virtually Israel could probably have cash in hand in a blink of an eye to build their entire Third Jerusalem temple at any time Israel wants. All of this is clearly by the divine hand of God and is incredibly on time with all other end-time prophecies, which are precisely lined up at an apex today.
Seven-year treaty. Our strong and firm covenant with the many. The Bible tells us that a short time after, following directly on the heels of the war of Gog and Magog, the Antichrist will sign a treaty or an agreement with Israel for 7 years, and the very moment of the signing of this treaty or agreement marks the start of the 7-year tribulation. As we rapidly approach this day, information on what this treaty might be is starting to grow. We traditionally refer to this agreement as a peace treaty. Daniel 9:27, while may not be giving us all the details we would like, does gives us perhaps the best description of what this agreement actually is. Daniel 9:27. And he shall enter into a strong and firm covenant with the many for 1 week, 7 years. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and offering to cease, for the remaining 3½ years, and upon the wing or pinnacle of abominations shall come one who makes desolate, until the full determined end is poured out on the desolator. The Bible tells us that this is a strong and firm covenant with the many. The question is this a peace treaty? It may very well be. If this is a treaty of peace, it will not be a treaty to protect Israel from the world and the EU, it will be a treaty to protect the world and the EU from Israel. With the amazing victories and divine protection Israel will have experienced by then, the world will fear Israel and the EU would certainly not want to face Israel in battle. There is however a possibility that is growing more and more likely as this day approaches, which is that the strong and firm covenant with the many is the accepted offer of membership into the EU by Israel. At some point in the near future, the Antichrist will be at the head of the EU and global government will be forming around the EU via 10 world regions, with the EU being the seat of power, or capital region if you will. We can safely assume that this coming world government will not have been fully formed at this point due to the fact that many nations will join in the coalition led by Russia and Iran in what is known as the War of Gog and Magog, which will occur just prior to this treaty. This very act by those nations implies independent decisions and actions not governed by a central world government. Furthermore, at the point at which the coming world government is fully formed, it would have some degree of control over Israel. A treaty by a government with one of whom it governs would only serve to undercut the government's legitimacy and authority and would not be a logical course of action. Therefore, it is safe to assume the world government will not be fully formed at this point, although certainly well underway with possibly regions such as North American Union, etc. already in place. It also follows that this treaty or agreement will be between the Antichrist/EU and Israel. Let us first look at what will by then be the recent history that leads up to this point. First, Israel will have utterly defeated and conquered all of its neighboring enemies in a regional Middle East war prophesied in Psalm 83 as well as Isaiah 17, Ezekiel 25, 13-14, Jeremiah 49, Obadiah, Isaiah 17, Zephaniah 2, 3-5.
This time that is described in the Bible that was foreseen 2,000 years ago made no sense for centuries and centuries. Now we are actually living in a time where we can envision how it would be possible to have a mark or a number in everyone's right hand or their forehead. And we are actually in a world where it is politically not only possible, but it's occurring before our very eyes.
When they first appeared, computers were as big as a room. A few years later, you could easily fit one on a desk, then your lap, and now your hand, or even wear it. In the future, you'll put them directly under your skin. The first implantable mobile phone is expected to be sold by 2023. How will this affect the way we live our lives, communicate with one another, and absorb information? Until now, our online presence has been a projection of ourselves. With implants, real-time data from our physical bodies will become part of our digital footprint, redefining the meaning of being online and blurring the boundaries between the physical and digital world. Implantable and wearable devices will create great opportunities, but also great challenges for humanity. They will help monitor our health, provide immediate information about what we see, or help find missing children. Controlling devices with our brains will enable disabled people to fully engage with the world and open endless possibilities for teaching, learning, and many new experiences. They will also create an unprecedented need to define clear boundaries for personal privacy and risk causing addiction, escapism, and trauma. In the future, will it be possible to ever be offline anymore? And what will being online really mean?
I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666.
threats are today, what would you consider the greatest threat to our national security?
My assessment today, Senator, is that Russia presents the greatest threat to our national security.
Foreign Minister, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, has said that they want to or are prepared to introduce ground troops into Syria. Is that so? Are you on the brink of or prepared to or planning to send ground troops to Syria?
Yes.
Is it you want the United States to be involved on the ground? Are you looking for a US-led coalition on the ground?
Absolutely, yes. We're saying we will participate within the US-led coalition.
Time today, the Obama administration said that it is looking at how it might respond if Russia does not obey a ceasefire agreement. This comes after airstrikes hit 2 hospitals and a school in northern Syria. The bombings killed 22 people. Today, the Pentagon would not confirm whether it believes Russia carried out those airstrikes, only saying it would respond
And a serious
if necessary.
war zone disagreement is developing between Moscow and Washington. The Pentagon blames Russia for hitting civilian targets in Aleppo, while Russia's defense ministry has provided evidence that actually America was behind the strikes.
Well, Turkey and Saudi Arabia could be gearing up to launch a ground operation in the country. That's according to Turkey's top diplomat, who said they're ready to act if a common anti-ISIL strategy is worked out. Top story this hour, Turkey has attacked Kurdish fighters on Syrian territory for a 3rd day in a row. Ankara's foreign ministry claims it's acting in what it calls retaliation. Well, over the weekend, Turkish shells targeted Kurdish forces and reportedly even Syrian army units. It would be the first time Ankara has directly attacked President Assad's troops. Damascus also says 5 villages came under fire.
And the U.S. Navy announces plans to increase its operations in the disputed waters of the South China Sea. Now, the head of the U.S. Pacific Command says the sailings involve a U.S. warship coming within 12 nautical miles of islets claimed by China. Admiral Harry Harris says the move is aimed at rebutting Beijing's assertions of sovereignty in the area. Since October, the U.S. Navy has carried out 2 such operations in the South China Sea. Tensions have escalated in recent months between Washington and Beijing over the...
From my perspective, my role would be, even as the relationship is challenged, and even with the difficulties that we face right now, I think it's important that we attempt to maintain a military-to-military relationship, an effective military-to-military relationship with our Russian counterparts to the extent possible, to mitigate the risk of miscalculation and begin to turn the trend in the other direction in terms of trust.